The shuttle hummed softly as it descended through Lyseria's atmosphere. Captain Elias Thorne pressed his hands against the cold metal of the railing and stared out at the alien world beneath him. From above, the planet looked peaceful. Forests that glowed faintly in colors humans had no names for, rivers that shimmered like liquid crystal, and cities that floated in the sky, tethered to the ground by thick energy beams. It was beautiful, breathtaking, and utterly foreign. Elias had been trained for every imaginable scenario, but nothing in his career prepared him for a place like this. He had fought in wars across Earth's colonies, faced hostile alien life forms, and survived countless ambushes, yet the feeling of standing on Lyseria's surface for the first time was different. It was as if the planet itself was aware of him, observing with a silent curiosity that made him both nervous and alive. The shuttle landed on a floating platform above the capital city, its engines quieting with a gentle hiss. Lyserians moved gracefully across the platform, their movements precise and fluid, their skin shimmering in soft shades that changed with emotion. Elias could see why humans had been fascinated by them for decades. They were beautiful, yes, but there was something more, an elegance that carried intelligence, discipline, and power all at once. As the ramp lowered, Elias stepped onto the platform, his boots touching the glowing surface. He was immediately met by a squad of Lyserian guards. They were taller than he expected, wearing armor that looked like woven light, and their weapons were unlike anything he had seen. Despite their intimidating appearance, they bowed slightly, recognizing his role. Elias straightened, reminded that he was here as the princess's protector, not a guest. The palace rose before him like a structure from another world, towers curving upward in impossible angles, walls that glimmered with an inner light. Guards patrolled every level, and energy shields shimmered along the edges of the building. It was a fortress, yes, but one that felt alive, like it had grown rather than been built. Elias could feel the weight of his duty pressing on him. One wrong step, one mistake, and the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for him, but for the princess. He was led through the palace corridors, which were wide and filled with soft, ambient light. The walls pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, and he could hear faint hums of energy as he walked. The place smelled faintly of ozone and flowers, a strange combination that somehow felt calming. Every now and then, Elias caught glimpses of Lyserians going about their work, engineers manipulating floating machinery, scholars studying holographic displays, soldiers practicing formations that twisted and flowed like dance. It was a civilization at its peak, and humans were just a small addition. Finally, he was led into a large chamber at the heart of the palace. At first, he saw nothing but light, and then his eyes adjusted. There she was, Princess Aerolin. She stood in the center, tall and composed, her skin a pale shade that seemed to glow softly, her hair floating slightly as if caught in a breeze that only touched her. Her eyes met his, and for a moment Elias felt as if time slowed. There was intelligence in those eyes, yes, but also curiosity, and something deeper that made him instinctively aware that he was not just another human in a long line of centuries. "I am Princess Aerolin," she said, her voice melodic but firm. "You are Captain Elias Thorne, correct?" "Yes, Your Highness," Elias replied, bowing slightly. "I've been assigned as your guard. I will protect you with my life." She studied him for a moment, tilting her head slightly. "I chose you long before they sent you." Elias froze for a heartbeat, unsure if he had heard her correctly. The statement was strange, almost impossible to understand. How could she have chosen him before he even arrived? Yet the conviction in her voice left no room for doubt. "I don't understand, Your Highness," he admitted carefully. Aerolin's lips curved into a small smile. "You will in time. For now, know this. Your presence here is not by chance. Humans have qualities that others underestimate. Your kind see solutions differently. That is why you are here." Elias felt a mixture of pride and unease. He had trained his entire life to protect, to fight, to survive. And yet here was a situation that no training could have prepared him for. Being chosen, not for skill alone, but for something more intangible, something about being human itself. A bell chimed softly in the chamber, signaling the start of the day. Aerolin moved gracefully to a balcony overlooking the city, and Elias followed, ever watchful. The capital spread out before them, alive with motion and light. He realized that the real challenge would not only be keeping her safe from external threats, but understanding a world so different from his own. Still, as he looked at her, He felt a spark of determination. He had been chosen, yes, and he would not fail. Not here, not now, not ever. Lyceria was a planet of wonders, a place of danger and opportunity, and he, a human, was its unlikely shield. And somehow he felt that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Elias walked through the palace corridors with cautious attention. Every step echoed against the smooth walls, and he kept his senses alert. Though the palace seemed peaceful, he knew danger could come from anywhere. Lyceria had recently faced uprisings, and though the princess was safe for now, rebels and rival factions still lingered in shadows. Erilyn appeared at the end of the hallway, standing with poise and calm. She wore a ceremonial robe that shimmered softly in the light, yet her eyes held a sharpness that commanded respect. Elias stopped and saluted. "Captain Thorn," she said, "come closer." He obeyed, noting how her presence seemed to calm even the palace guards nearby. Erilyn's voice carried an authority that made it clear she was not just royalty in title. She was a leader in action. "I want you to understand the situation here," she said, gesturing to a holographic map of the capital city projected in midair. The map displayed layers of streets, energy fields, and buildings all glowing in soft blue light. The unrest isn't completely gone. Some factions refuse to accept peace. They are clever and they have allies beyond this planet. You must be vigilant, Elias nodded. "I will monitor every approach, Your Highness. No threat will reach you." Erilyn studied him closely, then smiled faintly. "It's not just about guarding me. You need to understand the people here, their strengths and weaknesses. You are human, yes, but humans see the world differently. That perspective can be more valuable than 1,000 soldiers." Elias hesitated, unsure how his human perspective could be more useful than the palace's advanced technology and trained Lycerian guards. "I will try my best to understand," he said cautiously. "Try is not enough," Erilyn replied. Her eyes softened for a moment. "You have already been chosen, Elias. That choice was made long before you arrived. Learn what it means." Before he could ask further, a soft alarm sounded in the palace. The walls pulsed with red light, signaling a security breach. The Lycerian guards around them snapped into action, moving with precision. Elias's training kicked in instantly. He scanned the hallways, calculating escape routes and points of potential attack. Erilyn raised a hand. "Stay close. I trust you to act." A small squad of masked figures emerged from a side corridor, attempting to bypass the palace's defenses. Elias moved forward, placing himself between them and the princess. His hand went to his sidearm, but instead of firing immediately, he used movement and positioning to block their advance, buying precious seconds. The intruders were not soldiers, they were thieves, skilled and fast, but unprepared for a human captain who had faced far worse on war-torn planets. Using careful maneuvers, Elias disarmed the first one, twisted the second away, and herded the rest toward a containment chamber. Erilyn watched silently, her expression unreadable, but Elias could see a flicker of approval in her eyes. When the last intruder was secured, the alarm ceased and the palace returned to calm. "You did well," she said softly, her voice almost carrying relief. "Not because of your strength alone, but because you acted with thought and foresight. That is what I value." Elias exhaled, feeling the tension leave his shoulders. "I only did what was necessary, Your Highness." Erilyn stepped closer, her gaze fixed on him. "No, Elias, that is exactly why I chose you. I have watched humans for a long time. You think differently, improvise, and adapt. That is what Lycerians often lack in times of crisis. You are not just my guard, you are my advantage." Elias felt a strange mix of pride and humility. He had faced many dangerous situations in his life, but no words had ever felt as powerful as hers. To be recognized not just for skill, but for the unique way a human mind works. It was both inspiring and humbling. Later, in a quieter moment, Erilyn invited him to walk along a terrace overlooking the city. The streets below were alive with movement, citizens going about their daily routines unaware of the recent breach. The lights of the floating buildings reflected in the shimmering rivers, creating a scene that felt almost magical. "You see," she said, "many think humans are fragile or limited by mortality. Yet your kind has a quality Lycerians rarely understand. Courage, yes, but also creativity under pressure. You will need both here, Elias." He looked at her and nodded. "I will not fail. Not while you are here." Erilyn smiled, a small gesture that carried warmth and trust. I know you won't. That is why I said I chose you long before you came. As the sun of Lyceria dipped lower, casting long shadows across the city, Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never known. This was not just a mission. This was a chance to show humanity's worth on a world far beyond his own, and as long as he stood by Erlen's side, he knew that no challenge was too great, no threat too cunning. For the first time, he understood that being human was not a weakness. Here it was a gift, a strength that could change the course of history on a planet that was both strange and beautiful. And somewhere deep in his mind, Elias sensed that this was only the beginning. The palace was quiet the next morning, but Elias knew that silence often preceded danger. He patrolled the halls with a measured pace, alert to even the faintest sound. Erlen moved beside him, calm and composed. Her presence a reminder that his duty was more than guarding. It was understanding the world she lived in and anticipating threats before they came. You handled the intruders well yesterday, Erlen said softly, walking alongside him. But skill alone will not be enough. There are tests ahead, Elias, some that will challenge not just your strength but your mind. Elias frowned slightly. Tests? He asked. I'm trained for combat, strategy, survival. I can face almost anything. She looked at him with a small smile. Almost anything, yes. But Lyceria is not just a place of strength. It is a place of intelligence, of subtlety. Sometimes the threat is not a weapon but a choice, a hidden move you must see before it happens. Before he could reply, a commotion came from the east wing. Palace alarms rang softly, signaling a breach in a training area. Elias immediately drew his sidearm, moving swiftly toward the sound. Erlen followed without hesitation. When they arrived, Elias saw a group of Lycerian soldiers in a simulated combat exercise. But something was wrong. The attackers were not following the expected patterns. They moved with unfamiliar tactics, testing the defenders in ways the simulation did not predict. Erlen watched closely. This is your test, she said. Not for the soldiers, for you. Elias's pulse quickened. He scanned the area, observing the attackers' movements. Unlike the soldiers, they were not bound by rules. He realized that the exercise had been designed to gauge his reaction, to see how a human mind would respond under unpredictable circumstances. Thinking fast, Elias directed the Lycerian soldiers using his human instinct for improvisation. He instructed them to shift formations, to use the environment creatively rather than rely on strict patterns. They hesitated at first, unused to his unconventional orders, but slowly adapted under his guidance. Erlen watched silently, her eyes following his every move. She seemed to study not only the strategy but the way he thought, the way he perceived the situation. Elias felt a strange sense of being evaluated, but it was not threatening, more like recognition of potential. The attackers, sensors, and holographic simulations controlled by the palace's AI changed tactics again, attempting to flank the defenders. Elias anticipated the move. He led a small group through a narrow corridor, cutting off the simulated intruders. Using a combination of speed, observation, and careful prediction, he neutralized the threat without unnecessary force. When the exercise ended, Erlen stepped forward. You see, Elias, she said, her voice calm but firm, you do not follow the rules blindly. You adapt, you think ahead, you see what others miss. That is why I chose you. Elias lowered his sidearm, feeling both relief and pride. It was difficult, he admitted, but I understand now. The test was not just about fighting. It was about thinking differently, she nodded. Exactly. Lycerians value strength, precision, and discipline, but they often forget creativity, intuition, and unpredictability. Humans bring that, and you have proven it. For the first time, Elias felt that he was not merely a guard or a soldier. He was someone whose presence could truly make a difference. He realized that Erlen's words yesterday were not idle praise. They were a recognition of a human quality that few others had ever seen or appreciated in her world. The day continued with lessons in strategy, politics, and diplomacy. Erlen explained the history of Lyceria's rival factions, their alliances and their weaknesses. Elias absorbed everything, noticing patterns that others overlooked. He asked questions, made suggestions, and Erlen listened, sometimes smiling at his insights. It became clear that his role would extend far beyond physical protection. He was being prepared to be an advisor, a partner in her efforts to stabilize the empire. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, Erlen invited Elias to the balcony overlooking the city. The floating buildings glowed softly in the evening light, and the rivers reflected the colors of the sky. The world looked peaceful, almost serene, but Elias knew that danger was never far away. "You performed well today," she said quietly, standing beside him. "Not because you are human alone, but because you think differently. That is what I value most." Elias looked at her, feeling a mix of determination and humility. "I will continue to do my best, Your Highness. I will protect you, and I will do everything I can to help your people." Erlen's eyes softened. "I know you will, Elias, and I know that humanity has a place here, not just as allies, but as catalysts for change. You are living proof of that." For a moment they both stood in silence, watching the city beneath them. Elias felt the weight of responsibility, but also the spark of possibility. He was a human in an alien world, chosen for qualities that no technology or weapon could replicate. And he understood that his path with Erlen was only beginning. Somewhere deep in his mind, Elias knew that greater challenges lay ahead, challenges that would test his courage, his intelligence, and his humanity. But he also knew that with trust, understanding, and determination he could rise to meet them. Lyceria was a world of wonder, danger, and opportunity, and he, a human, was ready to face it all. The morning light filtered through the palace windows, casting soft colors across the floor. Elias was already awake, moving quietly through the corridors as he inspected the defenses. Though the palace seemed secure, he knew that being alert was the only way to survive on a world as complex and unpredictable as Lyceria. Erlen approached him in the central courtyard, her expression serious but calm. "Elias, there is something you need to understand," she said. Her eyes held a weight of history that immediately drew his attention. "The peace we have here is fragile. There are forces that want to see Lyceria fall again, and they have grown cleverer over time." Elias nodded, gripping the railing beside him. "I understand, Your Highness. I will do everything I can to help." She gestured toward a series of holographic displays that illuminated the courtyard. "I want to show you something. It is part of Lyceria's history, our past wars, our victories, and our mistakes. And it involves humans." Elias leaned closer, curious. He had read about humans in other parts of the galaxy, and he knew that Lycerians had encountered them before. But he had not expected this, Erlen began to explain. Centuries ago, humans had traveled to Lyceria during their own age of exploration. They were few in number, but their resourcefulness and creativity had impressed the Lycerians. They had helped resolve conflicts, suggesting strategies that the Lycerians had never considered. They had built machines that combined simplicity and function in ways the aliens had overlooked. In some battles, human ingenuity had turned the tide, saving countless lives. Elias listened, fascinated. He had always known humanity could be clever, but he had never imagined that humans had left such a mark on an alien civilization. "So humans have always been different," he said slowly. "Not just strong or skilled, but clever in ways that Lycerians might not notice." Erlen nodded. "Exactly. And that is why you are here, Elias. Your kind has a quality that can make a difference even in ways Lycerians cannot predict. That is what I meant when I said I chose you before you arrived. I saw the value in human thinking long ago." He felt a strange pride mixed with responsibility. This was more than a mission. This was a recognition of everything humans had accomplished, everything they could still achieve, and now he was part of it. Just as he was absorbing the information, a messenger arrived with urgent news. Rebels in a distant city were mobilizing, threatening to destabilize the fragile alliances Erlen had worked to maintain. Though the threat was far from the palace, the implications were serious. "Elias," Erlen said, her voice calm but urgent, "I need your advice. How would humans respond to such a threat?" Elias thought quickly. "I would gather intelligence first, understand the enemy's strategy and weaknesses. Then I would use unexpected tactics, combining speed and innovation to counter them. And I would coordinate with local forces, ensuring everyone acts as one." Erlen's eyes brightened slightly. "That is exactly the approach we need. Lycerians often rely too heavily on strength and technology. You see the human advantage, adaptation, and creativity. That is why I trust you." Elias felt the weight of her trust heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. It was not just about survival. It was about making choices that could affect thousands of lives. And he understood that humans were not just participants in history here. They were catalysts, capable of changing the outcome of events that seemed predetermined. Over the next few hours, they worked together, planning responses to the rebellion. Elias suggested strategies that relied on deception, diversion, and unexpected maneuvers. Tactics humans had developed over centuries of survival. Erilyn listened carefully, occasionally nodding, her eyes reflecting both admiration and relief. "You are learning quickly," she said, "not just our ways, but how to combine them with your own. That is why you were chosen. You bring balance, insight, and strength." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the palace gardens, Elias walked with Erilyn to a quiet terrace. They looked out over the city, the floating buildings glowing softly as evening arrived. "You see, Elias," she said, "the world is not just about power or weapons. It is about understanding, creativity, and courage. Humans have these qualities in ways Lyserians often forget, and that is why I trust you." He nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. "I will do everything I can to honor that trust, Your Highness. I will protect you and help guide your people." Erilyn smiled, the soft glow of the city reflecting in her eyes. "I know you will. You are not just my guard, Elias. You are a part of something greater. Humans have always been underestimated, yet here you are, proving that your kind can make a real difference." Elias looked at her, feeling the weight of history and the possibilities ahead. He realized that this was more than duty. It was an opportunity to show the galaxy what humans could achieve, not just as warriors, but as thinkers, innovators, and partners. The stars began to appear in the sky, tiny points of light over Lyseria, and Elias felt a sense of determination he had never known. Challenges lay ahead, yes, but he was ready. With Erilyn's trust and humanity's ingenuity, he could face whatever the universe placed before him. And for the first time, he understood fully what she had meant. He had been chosen not just for skill, but for who he was as a human, and that choice could change the fate of an entire world. The palace had been quiet all morning, but Elias felt a tension in the air that made his senses sharper than ever. Lyseria had enjoyed a fragile peace, and he knew it could shatter in an instant. As he patrolled the outer perimeter with a small team of Lyserian guards, the glowing trees and floating structures of the city gave an almost deceptive sense of calm. Erilyn joined him near the palace gates, her expression steady but her eyes scanning the horizon. "Elias," she said softly, "I have received reports. A coalition of rebel factions is moving closer. They are stronger and more coordinated than anything we have faced in recent years. You must be prepared." Elias nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "I will make sure no one harms you or this palace. We can plan, anticipate, and act together." She placed a hand briefly on his arm, a gesture of trust and reassurance. "That is why I trust you, Elias. Not just as a guard, but as a strategist. I need you to lead with both skill and intelligence." The warning proved immediate. Alarms blared across the palace as scouts spotted enemy ships entering Lyseria's atmosphere. The floating city trembled slightly from the distant energy pulses of their weapons. The rebels were not merely attacking, they were testing the palace's defenses, probing for weaknesses. Elias moved quickly, issuing orders to the guards and coordinating with the palace defense systems. "Secure all exits. Protect the princess. Prepare the energy shields." His voice was calm but commanding, cutting through the panic that had begun to rise among the soldiers. Erilyn remained at his side, observing every move, giving him space to act, but also providing insight when necessary. She directed civilian areas to evacuate and ensured that no one would be trapped during the chaos. Elias admired her calm under pressure. Her leadership inspired the entire palace. The first wave of attackers struck just beyond the palace gates. Energy blasts lit the sky as defensive turrets fired in response. Elias moved through the battlefield with precision, guiding the Lyserian soldiers, anticipating enemy maneuvers, and using every tactic he had learned both from humans and Lyserians. He recognized patterns, predicted flanking attempts, and adjusted quickly, his mind racing faster than any machine. Erilyn's voice called out, directing him to an area where the shield was under heavy fire. Without hesitation, Elias sprinted forward, coordinating reinforcements and using cover to minimize casualties. When a section of the outer wall began to weaken, he led a small strike team, neutralizing enemy drones and stabilizing the barrier. The rebels were skilled. But Elias's human intuition gave him an advantage. He noticed small gaps in their strategy that the Lycerian soldiers had overlooked, using them to turn the tide. One by one, enemy units were contained, forced back or captured. The palace defenses held strong under his direction, and slowly the attackers began to retreat. When the battle finally subsided, Elias stood atop a platform, breathing heavily, surveying the damage. The palace had taken minor hits, but no lives had been lost, and the city remained secure. Guards and citizens alike looked at him with newfound respect. Not only had he protected the princess, but he had also ensured the safety of the entire city. Erilyn approached him quietly. "You see, Elias," she said, her voice calm but full of admiration, "this is what I meant when I said I chose you. Not because of your strength alone, but because of how you think, how you adapt, how you inspire those around you. You turned a battle that could have destroyed us into a victory." Elias shook his head, still catching his breath. "I only did what was necessary. I couldn't have done it without your support, Your Highness, and the cooperation of your people." She smiled, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "You underestimate your own worth. Humans have a perspective that Lycerians rarely see. The ability to improvise, to act when others hesitate. That is why I knew, long before you arrived, that you would be the one to stand by my side when the greatest challenges came." For the first time, Elias truly felt the depth of her trust and confidence. It was more than a duty. It was a partnership, a bond forged in the heat of battle and strengthened by mutual respect. As the sun set over the floating city, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Elias and Erilyn stood together, overlooking the calm that followed the storm. The palace was secure, the people safe, and for the moment peace had returned. But Elias knew this was only the beginning. The coalition of rebels might regroup, new threats could arise, and Lyceria's future remained uncertain. Yet he felt ready. Together with Erilyn, he could face whatever the universe sent their way. He looked at the princess, her calm demeanor shining even after the chaos, and felt a surge of determination. He was not just a guard, not just a soldier. He was human, chosen for qualities that went beyond strength and skill. Courage, insight, adaptability. These were what made him indispensable. Erilyn's hand brushed against his arm again, a silent gesture of trust and gratitude. And in that moment, Elias understood fully what it meant to be chosen, not by chance but by recognition of something deeper, something human that could change the fate of an entire world. And as the stars began to appear above Lyceria, he knew that the next battle, the next challenge would come, but he was ready, and together they would face it, proving that humanity's courage and ingenuity could shine even among the stars. The morning after the battle, Lyceria's skies were clear and the city glowed with a soft light, as though the planet itself was sighing in relief. Elias walked through the palace halls, observing the repairs and seeing the citizens return to their routines. The tension from yesterday still lingered in the air, but there was hope now, a sense that the empire could endure. Erilyn met him in the council chamber, where representatives from several loyal cities were gathered. Their discussions were serious, full of plans to rebuild, strengthen alliances, and prevent further uprisings. Elias could see the complexity of the negotiations. Every faction had its own goals, and trust had to be earned carefully. "You must understand, Elias," Erilyn said quietly as she led him to the side. "Strength alone is not enough to secure peace. We need unity, and sometimes that requires more than force. Your human perspective is invaluable. You see opportunities others miss, and that can turn suspicion into cooperation." Elias nodded. He had learned during the recent battle that thinking differently could make a decisive difference. Here, that ability could shape alliances and influence decisions that affected thousands. "I will do my best, Your Highness," he said. "I can help them see that working together is better than fighting alone." The council meeting began, and Elias observed carefully. He noticed subtle tensions between the representatives, a slight hesitation in speech, a glance toward an ally, a quiet challenge to authority. He understood how to approach these situations. Humans had learned diplomacy, compromise, and persuasion over centuries. When Erilyn opened the floor to proposals, Elias whispered suggestions that blended Lycerian wisdom with human practicality. He recommended fair resource sharing, creative joint defense plans, and innovative trade routes that would benefit multiple factions. Some suggestions were technical, others psychological, but all were designed to build trust and demonstrate cooperation. As the discussion continued, Elias noticed a representative resisting the plans, clearly distrustful of Lyserian leadership. Instead of confronting him aggressively, he advised Erlen to ask questions and invite his input, giving the man a sense of involvement. The tactic worked. Slowly, the representative softened, contributing ideas that strengthened the alliance instead of undermining it. Erlen's eyes met Elias's across the room, a faint smile acknowledging his insight. He realized that humans often understood negotiation in ways Lyserians, despite their intelligence, sometimes missed. It was not about force, it was about strategy, adaptability, and patience. After hours of discussion, the council reached agreements that balanced interests, secured resources, and established clear defense protocols. Elias felt a quiet pride not in winning, but in helping foster understanding. He had seen humanity's role in a larger context, a force not only of strength but of reason, creativity, and cooperation. Later, Erlen and Elias walked through the palace gardens. The air was filled with the soft scent of Lyseria's glowing flora, and the hum of energy fields made the place feel alive. "You see, Elias," Erlen said, "humans have always been underestimated. They are judged by physical strength or technology, but your kind excels where patience, observation, and creativity matter most. That is why you are not just my guard, you are my partner." Elias felt a warmth at her words. "I never imagined that humans could have such an impact here," he admitted. "I thought my role would be limited to protection, to fighting, but I see now that humans can influence the future in other ways too." Erlen nodded. "Exactly. Strength alone can defend, but understanding and foresight can build a lasting peace. You have shown that humans are capable of both." As evening approached, a messenger arrived with news from one of the allied cities. They reported successful cooperation and stronger unity among the citizens, crediting the leadership of Erlen and the guidance of her human advisor. Elias read the report carefully, feeling a deep satisfaction. His presence, his perspective, and his ability to think differently had already made a difference. Walking back through the terrace overlooking the city, Elias and Erlen paused to watch the floating buildings glow against the night sky. "You have done well, Elias," she said softly. "Lyseria has gained more than allies today. It has gained hope, and that is as important as any victory in battle." Elias smiled, humbled. "I only acted on what I knew, Your Highness. The real work is yours, the leadership, the courage to guide your people." Erlen turned to him, her expression gentle but resolute. "And yet, I would not have been able to achieve it without you. Humanity has always surprised me, Elias. That is why I chose you. Your kind brings balance to this world. Strength guided by thought, courage guided by understanding. That is a rare gift." He looked at her, realizing fully that their bond was no longer just protector and princess. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and mutual reliance. Humans were not just visitors or soldiers in this alien world. They were catalysts, capable of shaping the course of history. The stars appeared above Lyseria, twinkling in a clear night sky. Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never known. There would be more challenges, more battles, and more moments that tested every skill and quality he possessed. But he was ready. Together with Erlen, he could face them all. And for the first time, he understood completely what she had meant when she said she had chosen him long before he arrived. It was not chance, it was recognition of human potential, of qualities that could change worlds, and of the unique role he was destined to play in Lyseria's future. The days following the council's meeting were filled with preparation and careful planning. Elias worked tirelessly alongside Erlen, helping to strengthen the alliances they had forged and ensuring that Lyseria's defenses were ready for any potential threat. Each city, each faction had its own concerns, but Elias's human perspective helped find solutions that bridged differences and encouraged cooperation. Erlen moved among the citizens, her calm presence reassuring them, but she always returned to Elias for advice. He guided her with insights learned from observing patterns, understanding people, and anticipating problems before they arose. Together they were more than a leader and a guard. They were a team capable of guiding an entire civilization toward stability. One evening, as the twin suns began to set, casting long golden shadows over the floating city, Erlen and Elias stood on the palace balcony. The sky was painted with colors that humans could barely name, and below them, the city's lights shimmered like stars mirrored on the ground. "You have done more than I ever expected," Erlen said softly, her voice carrying both pride and gratitude. "Lyceria has survived, and our people are beginning to trust one another again, and that is because of you." Elias shook his head. "It was not me alone, Your Highness. It was the cooperation of your people and your guidance. I only added what humans often do best: adaptation, observation, and quick thinking." She turned to him, her expression calm but intense. "No, Elias, you added more than that. You brought a perspective that Lycerians rarely understand. You reminded us that courage is not only in weapons but in ideas, in foresight, and in the willingness to act when others hesitate. That is why I chose you long before anyone sent you here." Elias looked out over the city, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that humans had always been underestimated, not just here on Lyceria but throughout the galaxy. And yet in this moment he saw that human qualities, creativity, courage, and insight could shape the destiny of worlds. The calm did not last long. Scouts reported movement at the edge of the Empire, a coalition of enemies regrouping and preparing for a final strike. Erlen turned to Elias with resolve. "The ultimate test is coming. We must be ready and we must act together." Elias felt a surge of determination. "Then we will face them, not just with strength but with intelligence. We will show that humans and Lycerians together can overcome any threat." The battle that followed was unlike any they had faced before. Enemy forces approached from multiple directions. Their technology advanced, their tactics unpredictable. But Elias and Erlen worked as one. Using the alliances they had built, they coordinated defenses across the cities. Erlen directed resources, personnel, and strategy, while Elias anticipated enemy movements, suggested countermeasures, and adapted plans in real time. Lycerian soldiers fought with precision, but it was Elias's human intuition that turned the tide. He noticed patterns the enemy did not intend to show, predicted ambushes, and guided Lycerian squads to intercept them before they could strike. His unconventional tactics surprised the attackers, forcing them into retreat after retreat. Throughout the battle, Erlen remained calm, issuing commands with clarity and focus. Her trust in Elias never wavered, and in turn he trusted her guidance. Together they moved seamlessly through chaos, turning what could have been destruction into victory. When the last of the enemy forces withdrew, the city was safe. Citizens emerged from hiding, cheering, and celebrating not only the defeat of the enemy, but the unity that had made it possible. Elias and Erlen stood together, overlooking the city as night fell. "You see now," Erlen said softly, "humans are more than you ever believed. You are more than a guard. You are a force that can change history." Elias smiled, humbled. "I have only done what humans often do, adapt, act, and learn. But I see now that with trust and cooperation, even one human can make a difference in the lives of thousands." Erlen reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "And that is why I chose you. Not by chance, not by orders, but because I saw the potential in you long before anyone sent you here. You are human, and that humanity is a gift to this world." As the stars of Lyceria's night sky glimmered above, Elias understood fully the meaning of her words. Humans were not just visitors, not just soldiers. They were innovators, thinkers, and partners, capable of shaping civilizations. He had been chosen because he embodied that potential, and together, he and Erlen had proven that humanity could shine among the stars. The city was safe, the alliances were strong, and the future of Lyceria looked bright. And as Elias stood beside the princess, he realized that this was only the beginning of a journey that could take them beyond the stars, carrying hope, courage, and human ingenuity wherever they went. He looked at Erlen, the princess who had trusted him from the start, and felt a surge of certainty. Humans had a role to play in the galaxy, and he would fulfill it, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of humanity's strength, wisdom, and courage. And in that moment, under the glowing skies of Lyceria, Elias knew that being chosen was not a privilege, it was a responsibility, one that he would carry with honor forever.